Hi there, and welcome to Green Shoe Conversations. I'm Stephanie Cochran, and this is episode 16. Thanks for joining us. Today, I've got a really exciting team with me. I have got Miss Rebecca Holt, who is one of our therapists here at Green Shoe, and Miss Kenzie Lyons joining us from Stonegate. Hey, ladies, how are y'all?
Doing great.
Good.
Really good.
Good. And Kenzie, just so you know, oh my goodness, the last, probably 6 weeks, we have really kind of spent some time diving into our model and talking about the 5 core issues. And several people have been kind of asking us to give more information about addiction because we see that pop up. I mean, again, through some of the different core issues. And, that's one of the main areas that we also focus on. And this just happens to be September is Recovery Month. And I know this has been kind of a passion of yours. So we wanted, all of us to kind of get together and just kind of chat and see what's going on out there in the world. And then also how we all kind of view addictions. But before we get started, Kenzie, why don't you introduce yourself and kind of give us a little bit of lowdown?
Okay, so my name is Kenzie. I'm with Stonegate Center. I'm also a licensed drug and alcohol therapist. And like Stephanie said, I have a huge passion for Recovery Month and just helping people kind of find their passion and lead them down a journey to, I like to call it well-briety. I heard somebody use that term one time. I'm coining that because it was really, really good. So yeah, I'm grateful to be here today. So thank you.
Great. I love that. Well-briety.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, kind of introduce yourself. I know you're with the team, but give us a little bit more background on you.
Yeah. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also an EMDR trained therapist, which is eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing therapy. I've been with Green Shoe for about 2 years. Before that, I worked doing individual group therapy, but working with trauma has always been a passion of mine because I feel like when we can heal the trauma, it impacts our relationships, it impacts our families, our communities. And so that's been a huge passion of mine in this field. And so I'm excited to be with Green Shoe. It kind of lines up with what I've been doing and my passion. So
absolutely. Well, and thanks for doing that. So talking addiction. So Kenzie, kind of give us your viewpoint. And again, you're a drug and alcohol counselor. So, what's kind of, when I say addiction, how would you kind of talk about that?
Holy cow, that's a question. That is a question. So I think, one of the biggest things when it comes time to addiction is the stigma of addiction, right? So a lot of the times I like to ask people, who do you think are addicts and alcoholics? And you get that common thing for people who aren't necessarily in the industry of like, oh, the homeless person on the bridge or the really skinny guy asking for money on the corner. Well, that's not the truth all the time. That addiction can look like you, it can look like me. It's our high-powered attorneys, it's our servers at the restaurants that we go to, it's the star athlete of the high school, it's just everybody. Everybody has I don't want to say the ability, but everybody has the potential to be an addict and alcoholic. So when it comes time to addiction, I have a friend named Brian Anderson who works for Rob's Ranch, and he kind of explains addiction this way. And he heard it from somebody and it's just resonated with me. He's like, we're all born into life as a cucumber, right? Like, so we're all walking cucumbers. And at some point, for some of us, when we get in that brine or whatever creates the pickle, like there are some of us individuals who are out there that at some point transition to a pickle, and a pickle can never be a cucumber again. And so when we look at addiction and we look at all of the stuff that's involved with that, for some reason, that analogy has just reigned so like mind-blowing to me because it puts it in a visual stance of like, addiction is very powerful, and once you have it, you have it. But the blessing in it is there's ways to cope and move forward, through recovery, the 12 steps, through smart recovery, whatever that looks like for people. So it's just kind of like a big question, Stephanie.
Yeah, no, I know it is. And that's why I asked it. And the best thing, there's not a right answer, but I love asking that because I want to see or hear from that. And I think you bring up some great points about, we all have potential either to have our own addictions. And I think that we all, have some type of addictions. and kind of lean towards that. And it's different, you know, we're all different cucumbers. And of course, and, you know, how many variety of pickles are there in the world as well. But I love the fact that you said it doesn't matter. There's recovery.
Yeah.
You know, that's the end. Okay. Rebecca, it's only fair I'm going to shoot that question at you as well.
Here we go.
Well, one thing that I think of is, and we've talked about this in our podcast, but the window of tolerance. So how do we deal with emotions when we're out of the window of tolerance? That's where I start when I start looking about addictions, compulsive behaviors, because ultimately it's how we deal with uncomfortable things in life to not feel those feelings. And so it absolutely, I think we always think of substances or alcohol whenever we think of coping in an unhealthy way in addictions. But a lot of times, and especially at Green Shoe in our model, we look at those behaviors because it may be food, it may be shopping, it may be gambling. I know sometimes it can be even working out. Sometimes they even seem like the healthiest coping mechanism. If you're doing that all the time so you don't stay present and you don't feel your feelings, that can be an unhealthy compulsive behavior. And so I think that learning, and Kinsey, I love that you talked about that recovery because it's a lifetime. You know, it's not like you get in a magic jar of pickle juice and you're a cucumber again.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lifetime of living with that and learning like, oh wow, okay, this is how I'm coping with my feelings.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the ways we look at it through that trauma perspective.
Yeah. I think that that's really powerful what you said of like, it's a lifetime thing because, you know, we talk about continuing care after treatment or, you know, just like constant care. And I think that changing that term is so important to continuing because we used to call it aftercare. Well, there's, you know, is that it's a daily reprieve. Like it's a daily thing that we have to work on every single day, continue in that recovery format, whether it's for sugar, caffeine. I mean, like, yeah, alcohol, drugs, you know, we're all like, we need to do a coffee cheers.
Yay!
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Jerks, but
Yes, exactly.
yeah. So I think, you know, when we look at things like that, we have to remember like 20 years of a behavior can't just go away in 30 days. 20 years of a behavior doesn't just go away in a year. It's a constant state of effort and working towards a bigger and better you while going to counseling and listening to things of moments of, oh man, I didn't realize that's what I was doing and like actively changing it. You know, like the action versus word paradigm. It's so important to act it versus just talk it.
I know I see here, you know, with our participants, one of those big aha moments happens within the first hour of the week. And, you know, we start out talking about, you know, we do a check-in with, you know, what are our, you know, we say addictions, but then we kind of also say compulsive behaviors. And so many times we have people that come in that are recovering from drugs and alcohol, but then they go, but after that, then it seemed like I turned to food or I turned to cigarettes or I turned to exercise. And so how much do you guys see that addiction pattern, again, kind of goes from one to the other, and again, just kind of keeps going?
Yeah, I know I see that quite a bit because what is happening is instead of facing those voids that are going on, like when the void of this substance is gone, I'm going to start feeling it with working out. And what is happening is we're not truly, you know, and Rebecca, you can talk about this too, is like we're not truly facing those emotions and all of that stuff that's going on internally with us. It's just a health, like we're not putting the toxic substance in our mouth, but we're doing the overworking out because it's keeping us distracted from what we really need to cope with, and that's the raw emotion behind some things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, sometimes again through that lens of trauma, it can be those band-aids of like there's a gaping hole that we're trying to put a band-aid on it so we don't feel the pain. But until we really sit with the pain or the fear or the shame, whatever it is, we can't get through it. We're just kind of delaying experiencing that emotion with behaviors or substances, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I like how you guys said it can be something that we view as good or healthy, but it's still keeping us out of our reality, or it's still allowing us not to have to feel. You know, back to your analogy, Kinsey, with the pickle juice, it kind of fits into, you know, what we experienced in our childhood. You know, none of us can control what brine we were thrown into, right? You know, and so, but it's having to go back and actually heal versus just keeping the Band-Aids.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And that's a hard process too, is facing those feelings, right? No one wants to be sad.
Yeah.
No one wants to go through that trauma again. No one wants to talk about how anger put them in jail or whatever that emotion was that brought them to where they are at. But, I promise you, if you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, this is hitting my heart right now. If we can just slowly work you through that, you're going to feel a lot better on the other side. Peace, like Rebecca said, peace and happiness can happen.
That's a great point, is if you're not getting that joy back, or being your authentic self, then what you're doing is not working, even though you think it's good. You're like, I'm not doing it anymore, but one of the biggest things, for me, this is kind of a personal thing, is I didn't realize my people pleasing was such an addiction. Who knew that was codependent? Because I'm helping everybody, and it's interesting. This weekend in particular, I had to spend quite a bit of time of taking care of somebody. I mean, to where it really, my whole weekend. And I joked about Monday morning when I was back at work saying, oh, I'm so glad I'm back at work and all this. Well, sure enough, we're starting our thing, and Rebecca leads this 5-minute meditation. And it was the first time since that Friday I'd sat and been quiet by myself. And it hit hard, that I had some stuff, and I made the connection instantly by me having to, kind of be taking care of somebody else all weekend. I got to avoid some painful feelings. And so, again, I had that awareness, but it's like, oh, wow, that just by stopping for that 5 minutes and having to be still, it hit.
Oh man, that's powerful stuff right there. Well, and the cool thing is that, and when you have those aha moments like that, you have a choice to embrace the moment and create change, or to dwell in it. You know what I mean? And you chose to embrace it and think, oh, and then you chose to be vulnerable by telling everybody who's watching this podcast about it, which is huge.
Right. Well, and that's something that I've learned, is and again, I told my team right afterwards, oh my gosh, guys, guess what just happened? Because I wasn't going to avoid it, because it's interesting. Yeah, it was painful for that moment and I had to sit with it, but then I get to go on, and just by being in it I was okay. Things were fine. I didn't fall apart, I didn't shatter into a million pieces. And so, that making that awareness and that connection, is so important.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up, Stephanie, because I think that anytime in recovery, whether it's in trauma or codependence or substances, but awareness is such a huge part of that. And when we start thinking about what takes me out of my reality, we can start looking, is that healthy that I do that? Is that healthy that, and Stephanie, you always, is it healthy that I go organize my kitchen for 3 hours because I don't want to feel something? I want to avoid something, So that's a good place to start, is that awareness, though. What takes you out of your reality?
I like that. That's a good question.
Yeah. And again, it requires you to be vulnerable, and I know, especially in today's, day and age, and going right back to your first statement, Kenzie, it's about the stigma, for some people, I think it's even easier to stand up and say, yes, I'm an alcoholic, versus saying, I'm a people pleaser, I'm a codependent, because then everybody's like, oh, that's not an addiction. That's not real,
Right. Or they think, oh, I can easily manipulate her.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Rebecca, you've talked before, though, about, kind of going back the neurological aspect, and Kenzie as well, that plays that role in addiction. And sometimes we learn that from a very young age, because it's not just I choose to want to go drink, or I choose, to smoke or use, drugs.
Yeah. I think it's, because a lot of the work we do here, we go back and look at what happened 0 to 18. But one of the questions that I ask people a lot of times is, that first time you used, what was the emotions that you felt? Because if at 13, the first time that you drank around a peer group, you felt like you fit in for the first time, your brain makes a neurological connection. Alcohol means I feel good about myself. And so sometimes our brain can wire in that way, even as an adult, that if I'm feeling worthless and I feel like I'm not connecting, that my brain's like, oh, hey, remember alcohol helps you do that. And so I think it's interesting to kind of examine those first experiences with substances or even just addiction. I mean, people pleasing, the first time you remember feeling good about yourself because you made someone happy, you know, it's interesting to kind of take a look at that just to increase your awareness of how that might present in your life today.
Yeah, that was spot on. She just killed that one. That was good, Rebecca, because that's 10 points for Rebecca. That was really good because it's true. Like there's just something in you that eventually clicks and you're like, this is getting me through this moment. You know what I mean? And that was spot on. That was spot on.
And then we go back to that. And then I can't help but think about what we've been through the last 6 months.
My God.
Quarantine, pandemic, everything. And Kenzie, you and I have had this conversation about kind of what we're hearing and seeing. I mean, not only can you now get alcohol delivered to your house, I mean, you don't have to leave home for any of it. So what are you hearing from people you're working with and how they're dealing with this pandemic and their recovery?
Man, to be honest, it's been really just mind-blowing because, recovery is so much of a community-based thing. You know what I mean? Like you go to your meetings, if that's something you're doing, or you go to church, or you do all of these things, and it's all involving community. So for a lot of people who are at home, they're in like complete isolation from their community, especially young, new people in recovery. This has been really, really hard because they're going from having a community to having nothing and getting to meetings and just challenging them to do online meetings or get creative with things like that. I've seen a lot of people relapse, unfortunately, because their biggest trigger is loneliness. And when we were all, had the mandated quarantine, there was so much going on. And, at first I was like, with the alcohol and stuff, I was blown away of like, oh my gosh, people are delivering it. But being in the perspective for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what happens for people who are, chronic alcoholics who can't get their alcohol? Like how many people are going to die from detoxing at home? And I'm just like, I think at one point I was just sitting there like, this is going to be potentially a really big epidemic coming up in the future of mental health and substance abuse and the trauma that has been created in this 6-month period, because there's just so much, there's just so much. And it's just been really interesting and sad kind of because it's keeping people motivated in a different manner, but getting outside of the comfort zone of what the normal square looks like has been so important too. Like, okay, how can you, if we can get through this sober, like you can do anything sober.
True. And I think you're right. I think the second wave wasn't about COVID. It's been about the mental health. So, and we're hearing the same thing. We have so many people reaching out, for help, and just hearing what the last 6 months has done to them, and everything. So that's been a huge concern, with all that, which kind of leads me though to kind of, you've done a little passion project this month. Yeah. So the coffee is a joke, but through this pandemic, you did coffee with Kenzie. You and I have done several coffee with Kenzie meetings.
Yes.
I mean, for all of us just in the mental health community to stay connected, but then you kind of did something this month. I know you started for, Recovery Month, but I'm gonna let you talk. So kind of share about what this coffee with Kenzie has been.
So when quarantine and everything first started, I was like, okay, since I'm home, I got to be a little creative on how I'm going to stay connected with people. And I love coffee. Everybody who knows me knows like coffee is my love language. And I was like, I'm going to do like a coffee with, just tag it like a tagline of coffee with Kenzie because it sounded kind of fun. Well, I was like thinking about how with Recovery Month, last year we did a softball tournament and I was trying to think about how I could still do something that could bring something to somebody, but I wanted to enhance it a little bit. So all of the conversations I have for the month of September have been recovery based. And oh my gosh, I cannot believe the outpouring and like the feedback that I have received from it. Like I had somebody in Nebraska reach out to me, a corrections officer. And she was like, I was really struggling with trying to figure out what my purpose has been with what I'm doing in life. But after watching one of your videos, I realized that my purpose is sharing my story with the other inmates. And I'm like, yes, this is amazing.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah, and it's been so much fun. And I'm pumped because I've had such an outpouring and like conversations. Sometimes conversations just need to be had. You know what I mean? And so once Recovery Month is over, I'm going to transition it to Coffee with Kinsey, Life's Little Lessons, and just talk about anything and everything. And at the end, coin, okay, so after all of that was said and done, what did you learn? And just call it Life's Little Lessons.
Yeah.
And so it's been a creative outside of the box thing, but it's been really, really cool just to have conversations for people who are in active recovery. Have a conversation with a mom whose daughter is in active addiction. And I had a conversation with a professional, Billy Samuel, that went really well. So it's been a lot of fun. It is a passion piece for me because it's just something fun.
What have been
real.
the biggest takeaways from those conversations? And I've listened to them too, so they've been really good. But for you, what are some of the biggest takeaways?
I think some of the biggest takeaways is like that a lot of people in this day and age, when they're looking for help, sometimes go to the internet first, because the last thing we want to do is like tell somebody over the phone or face to face that we're struggling.
Yeah.
And so I've taken away that thought for me was like completely true, that because I've had people say like I'll get on and watch YouTube videos or this or that. And so I think for me the biggest takeaway is just to remember that in the community, what we're doing is making an impact, and we just need to be willing to go outside of the box to continue to make that impact. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, I think that's awesome.
Okay.
And I know they're on Facebook, or I see them on Facebook, but how can people find your Coffee with Kinsey's?
So they're on my personal Facebook page, which you can go and watch because I have them public on there. But I've been trying to find another format, whether I'm going to put them all on YouTube or something, because I partnered with Rob's Ranch, who did all of the editing and stuff for me. And so we're kind of trying to figure out how we can keep the forum open. So if somebody wants to watch them again and they're not like a direct friend with me on Facebook, so they're on my personal Facebook page and they're on Rob's Ranch's personal Facebook page. And then I'm hoping to get them on like a YouTube channel. I don't really know how that'll work yet, but we're in the conversations of talking about that.
Yeah. And I will tell you, we have an amazing social media girl, and she can absolutely help you with that. So I love mentioning her because she's, always behind the scenes and doesn't want to in the front.
Awesome.
But yeah, I want to encourage everybody, because again, they're short conversations, but they're so impactful. One thing too, I really want to emphasize is resources, because addiction centers did not shut down. Stonegate did not shut down. You guys had such the luxury that if people needed help, you had the COVID precautions. People could come in, and you had abilities if you had a quarantine. So they're still able to get the help, that they needed. And you partner with other addiction centers. That's what I love about you. It's kind of like the Miracle on 34th Street philosophy of I will help you get the help you need. There's Rob's Ranch that's here in Oklahoma. And again, they did not shut down. And so there is help. Just don't think because we're in this pandemic, there's definitely help. And just so you know, too, anybody can go to our website at greenshoe.org and get the link to Stonegate under resources. And there's tons of stuff there that they can find you, that way.
Yeah, they're like, I'll find you.
Yes. Okay. Oh yeah, they'll hunt you down. Don't worry. Rebecca, any final thoughts? I mean, ladies, this was awesome.
Oh my gosh.
To kind of talk, but kind of wanted your thoughts, Rebecca. Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing I love about our community in mental health and addiction is just the connectedness that there is. I just kind of, to reiterate what you said, there's help out there. And that's one thing I tell people when they call, like if you're not coming in for a group until like January or a few weeks or something, we're going to get you the help you need. But I know Kinsey operates the same way of that first step is always the hardest, of making that phone call. But there's so many professionals out there that is like, come on, bring it to us. We're going to help you. And so I just wanted to kind of reiterate that point.
No, and that's a great point, because I do think one of the gifts that this pandemic has done for mental health is telehealth therapy. Everybody now is doing telehealth. And insurances are allowing that. It's just, that's been one of the biggest things that been able to really make sure we reach out. So, okay, Kenzie, any last words?
I'm super grateful and I love you guys. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, well, we're super
grateful
grateful
for
for you. Yeah, absolutely. Your
you.
support and your energy, we love that. But also your insight, again, is so valuable and important to us. And so anybody that's out there that needs help, again, people can go to our website, and that's up on the screen right now. If you need to find us or reach out to us at greenshoe.org. If you have questions, info@greenshoe.org. Actually, this podcast was requested by some folks that really wanted more information on addiction, and we appreciate them doing that. But ladies, thank you so much, and we will talk to everybody next week.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.